Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're starting on time. Hi, everybody. Thank you again so much for joining us. The title of this workshop is Raising Up Voices Within the Community to Better Serve the Community, highlighting the Montgomery County Food Council's Food Security Community Advisory Board. And we have some wonderful guests here who are going to be chatting with us about that. I do want to do a quick introduction and then we'll bring in our guests. My name is Kim Mascaratolo. I'm the Director of Communication and Digital Outreach here at Hunger Free America. And we like to start with a land acknowledgement. So I am speaking from the physical space of New York City. I would like to acknowledge the land on which I currently reside, which was historically that of Lenape, Canarsie, Rockaway, and Wappinger Indigenous peoples. We deliver a land acknowledgement to acknowledge the historical legacy of colonialism by honoring and paying respect to the land which was taken by conquest, along with the domination of people who inhabited the land and the imposition of white supremacy. And we do it to raise greater public consciousness of Native sovereignty and cultural rights as a small step towards an equitable relationship and reparation. And we encourage participants on the call to acknowledge the land that sustains and supports you. And if you don't already know your area's history, we're going to provide a link in the chat so that you can learn more about the Indigenous peoples that live or lived in your area. So if you are new to the work that Hunger Free America does, HFA is a nonpartisan national nonprofit building the movement to enact policies and programs needed to end domestic hunger and ensure that all Americans have sufficient access to nutritious food. And we do this both through our direct service as well as our advocacy work, both of which we feel really strengthen one another. And as the Director of Communications, a big part of my job is trying to get that message out there, both to the public as well as to the media, and to really amplify that message in social media. So the work that we do continues to be vital. There is no denying that hunger and food insecurity swelled during the pandemic, with estimates of over 50 million individuals being affected during the height of the crisis. And that food insecurity was a problem before the health and economic crisis. But according to recent research that HFA published, the United States was able to alleviate some of the greatest impacts with increased and expanded federal food and cash aid. We actually saw a 38% drop in food insufficiency when these programs were deployed. So the positive impact of these programs that they have on reducing hunger and poverty really illustrate the power of policy choices and why HFA's work and our collective work as advocates is so important. So we also want to acknowledge, obviously, the continued racial disparity in domestic hunger. While all types of low-income families are suffering, data shows that people of color are disproportionately impacted at higher rates. Research from the USDA shows that in 2020, just under 22% of Black respondent households experienced food insecurity, as did over 17% of Hispanic respondent households. That's in contrast to around 7% of white respondent households. As the global pandemic and demands for racial justice continue to be heard, we must continue to uplift Martin Luther King Jr.'s message of justice. For over 15 years, Hunger Free America has honored Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy by coordinating events and volunteer action supporting long-term solutions to hunger. We hope that volunteers will learn something new today, take action in the fight against hunger, as well as take away some ideas on how to continue working towards and supporting a more equitable community. So as we begin this workshop, I want to introduce some group norms to frame our dialogue. We like to say a safe space is a brave space, and we are called to create a brave space where we accept the likelihood that we will be uncomfortable when investigating issues of race, privilege, and oppression and our roles within them. So work to recognize your privilege and use this space to investigate your privileges such as class, gender, sexual orientation. Honor the different experiences we all bring to this space. Take risks, lean into the discomfort. You know, we are all in process. So challenge yourself to contribute even if it's not perfectly formulated. Actively listen, use your energy to listen to what's said before, thinking about how to respond, and notice when defensiveness and denial arise. And finally, if anyone else has any additional norms to add, we certainly welcome them into the chat. So now that we have gotten through all that, I would very much like to introduce our co-hosts for this workshop, Elizabeth and Cynthia from the Montgomery County Food Council. Elizabeth joins the Montgomery County Food Council team as an AmeriCorps Vista through partnership with Hunger Free America. She focuses on implementing the Food Council's food security programs and supporting food assistance providers. Cynthia is also an AmeriCorps Vista with Montgomery County Food Council through partnership with Hunger Free America, and she assists the Montgomery County Food Council's food security programs through coordinating community engagement and administrative support. So Cynthia and Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to pass it to you two, and I believe you have a presentation to kick us off here this afternoon.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen and hold on, sorry. Hey, do you guys see my screen? All right, perfect, thank you. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the Food Security Advisory Board before we get into the roundtable portion. So the Food Security Advisory Board, the history, it was founded in 2018 by the Food Council after the Food Council co-created the County Executive's 5-year food security plan. So the FSAP outlines the path towards building a resilient food system in Montgomery County in which all people have access to safe, sufficient, and nutritious food. And after the FSP, the Food Council found that it was critical to continue community engagement on food insecurity. And that's how the Food Security Advisory Board was born, FACB is short. So it's comprised of county residents who are currently or have in the past experienced food insecurity. Board members provide insight, feedback, and advise the Food Council on food insecurity related issues. Members advocate, volunteer, and spread awareness about food insecurity issues in Montgomery County through their advocacy plans, which I'll touch up on later. And their work is very critical to implementing the food security plan. Okay, so the Food DB released a impact report in April 2021, which summarizes feedback and policy recommendations from the board members. And I'll just name a couple of them. A couple of key recommendations are expanding food access for college students and improving the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. Okay, and so basically this is the responsibility overview for FAC members. So they meet 4 times a year and attend and volunteer at events related to food insecurity. And they also create and implement their own advocacy plans. So each member thinks about a topic related to food insecurity that they care about. So examples are like housing and homelessness, or people with disabilities, or accessing food for students and immigrant communities. Members submit an advocacy plan to the Food Council, and they implement these plans. Okay, so the impact of these advocacy plans have been tremendous, and we have some metrics from 2021. The 2021 FSCB cohort was able to reach 5,939 people on social media. They conducted over 556 outreach to people regarding SNAP, and they've also done engagement official outreach. So if we see in the picture on the right, 2 FAC members who are actually speaking today met with Congressman Jamie Raskin at a Hunger Free Roundtable. Vanessa Pierre, who is speaking today, she actually met with President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris regarding the importance of tax credits and, buying groceries with tax credits that, are given to people. And other advocacy plans that are focused and the FACB are people with disabilities, refugees and immigrants, and advocating to legislative officials. So this is the FACB in a nutshell, and then I'm going to take it away to Elizabeth, who will introduce the roundtable.
Thank you, Cynthia. The Food Council is very lucky to have Cynthia here supporting our Food Security Advisory Board. We are DC adjacent, so we do use acronyms, and so FSCAB might be what you hear from us. Knowing how challenging it is to build capacity in these programs, I just wanted to give a shout out to Cynthia for all the work she does there. And I'm even more excited to introduce 3 of our esteemed FSCAB members who are here with us today to share their experience. So I just wanted to give a brief introduction to them and then launch into a discussion about their work with us. So first we have Rona Reese, who retired in 2007 from a 40-year career as a healthcare professional. She was a university professor, administrator, an association executive. She's done it all. After retirement, she continued to work as a volunteer for a number of community service organizations to advocate for persons living with disabilities, and also doing work as a volunteer for the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And Rona has been a member of the Food Security Community Advisory Board, I think, since its inception in 2018. Is that right? Yeah. Next, we have Camilla Panaris, who works with the Montgomery County Food Council's SNAP Outreach Program. We're very excited about this program as we've just become a community-based organization able to sign folks up for SNAP directly. So Camilla works on that work. In addition to assisting residents, she's helping to educate them on SNAP requirements. She is a student at Montgomery College, and she is pursuing a degree in nursing. And I think she's been with the FSCAB since 2020. And finally, we have Vanessa Pierre. She is a million things. She is a garden coach and educator. She's a food activist in the DC metro area. When she's not being a single mother to 3 lovely, beautiful children, she is working full-time, and she runs an organization whose mission is to build a strong, self-sufficient, empowered, and healthy minority community through food and gardening education, demonstration, and advocacy. She has this brand, Homestead Hustle and Healing, which is an online platform that with local community initiatives whose mission is to end food insecurity among minority populations. And I just wanted to start our discussion by saying that we at the Food Council are incredibly grateful for our FSCAB members who are so willing to share openly about their experience. And so I just wanted to start off by saying thank you to the 3 of you for being here to share with us your experience in this program and your own lived experience. And so I guess I just wanted to start the questions off by asking each one of you to share what brought you to the FSCAB, what inspired you to join us, and maybe a little bit about your own experience, past or current, with food insecurity. And Rona, would you like to begin?
Sure. Thank you for that very nice introduction. I found myself in poverty unexpectedly about 7 years ago. In 2007, I was a victim of investment fraud. And I don't want to go into that in detail, but I was not the typical the person in need of food security. I had worked, I have a doctorate and so forth, and I'm white. And I found myself with a very, very low income. I had to move to subsidized housing. And a friend told me about Manna Food Bank and about the SNAP program, formerly called food stamps. So I applied, and thank goodness, because I didn't have enough money for food. And at that time, the SNAP benefit was very, very low. So I relied on Manna. And the first time I went to Manna Food Bank, I was shocked because most of the people waiting in line to get their food donation at the food bank were ethnic and racial minorities, Black and Hispanic people, low-income people. And I was appalled by the food that was being distributed. I'm very conscious of nutrition in my life, and I saw these people getting really poor nutrition, canned food, sweets, cakes, breads, boxed food, rice and pasta, no fresh food. And anyway, I was really appalled by that. And I really thought it was a racist issue. It affected me as a racist issue. Why are these people feeding their children what I thought was junk, not healthy, high sodium and so forth. Anyway, in 2018, I was invited to join the Food Security Community Advisory Board because I'm a person with lived experience. And I shared that at the first meeting and was delighted that instant action was taken. The Community Advisory Board made the recommendation to MANA that we should have fresh produce, and they opened pantries so we don't get just canned and boxed food and cakes and cookies. That's no longer part of MANA Food Bank. So I realized this is a group, a volunteer group that makes things happen, makes change. And I was so happy about that. So that's how I got involved. And I'm happy to be on the board. I've been on since 2018. And later I'll tell you about how this relates to my work with the disabled community and my advocacy plan. But that's how I got started.
Thank you, Rona. Thank you for highlighting one of the real reasons we're here today is to talk about, MLK's legacy and really making systematic changes. So thank you for starting us right off the bat with that. Camilla, do you want to answer the same question for us? What brought you to the FSCAB and why you chose to join?
Sure. Can everybody hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be here today. It's an honor to be part of this huge event. Well, my own food insecurities, like lack of access to food while in college, or not able to keep a healthy diet throughout my entire pregnancy due to expensive cost of groceries, is what inspired me to join the Food Security Community Advisory Board with the Montgomery County Food Council. As of now, thanks to all of these amazing resources, information, and education provided by the Food Council on anti-hunger policies, I find myself able to approach these opportunities and advocate on behalf of other residents, especially my own Hispanic community, and work on solutions to end with hunger. Because as what's his name, Michael J. once said, we are just managing the hunger, but we need to end with that. So that's what inspired me the most. I have a baby boy. I want the best future for him. And I feel like together and with people with passion about anti-hunger policies, we can come together to a solution and finally end this big issue. This shouldn't be an issue. Nobody should be living worry about hunger. So that's what inspired me.
Thank you, Camille. Yes, thank you for sharing that. And also if anyone has had the opportunity to hear Michael J. Wilson speak, he is the head of Maryland Hunger Solutions and an incredible advocate for anti-hunger advocacy and work in the state of Maryland. So thanks for raising his name. And then finally, Vanessa, would you like to give a little introduction to yourself and how you came to know the FSCAB and what inspired you to join?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me, especially on this day of remembrance and service. This is an absolute honor to be here. My name is Vanessa Pierre, and like she said, I do a lot of different things, but all of it is centered really around one purpose, and it is strengthening Black communities. And I grew up between the U.S. and Jamaica, and while we didn't always have, we were never hungry. And I always say that I didn't equate poor to hungry until I was a single mom in America. And so I knew what the differences were. I kind of looked into that and said, I do have some type of privilege, not having the most recent scars of not only slavery, discrimination, Jim Crow that my Black American peers had. And so I took that as an opportunity to create advocates in my own community. I feel like that is the key to changing things. And food is often the door to advocacy. So in my own experience, going from, not realizing that my mother was struggling till I was struggling on my own, because I can't say that I experienced food insecurity as a child, but then all of a sudden being a mom to 3 kids, they're hungry, they eat a lot. I found myself not being able to qualify for any benefits, and that's tough. that, you feel like the world is telling you you should be doing better, like your money should be spreading farther. So I didn't qualify for SNAP benefits for quite some time. Everyone said I made too much, but it was never enough. So I turned to making a way out of the tools I learned when I was younger. I started to garden and homestead and do things that would kind of put food on the table and create some self-sufficiency. Allowed me to kind of take back that one piece of control in my house, allowed me the headspace to start to think about changes I could make in my house. If I would advocate for my own home by taking back self-sufficiency, I could create change in my neighborhood. I can start to save some money. I can start to bring my family or uplift my own family. I use that model, and I am trying my best to replicate it in my community. I teach people to advocate for their own households first, and to be able to look around the community and say, okay, so how do we advocate for our community? How do we bring health, fresh options in? How do we advocate for parks and community gardens and things like that? One thing that I recognize is that we're often denied a seat at the table, and the Food Security Advisory Board is that seat at the table. And if I could share my experience to the Food Council and they could make real change, then I could be sharing what I learned in the community from people that I help and create real lasting change, if that makes sense. So thank you for having me again.
Well, and thank you for being here, Vanessa. Again, you raise an important issue. I think all of us Vistas are here today to learn from you, because we are here to help build community to make real change. So learning from you about the ways in which you have gone about doing this, and all of our FSCAB members, I think is a real value to us here as attendees to this event. Cynthia touched on the food advocacy plan that you are all working on as part of your tenure as an FSCAB member. So we would like to do a little deep dive now into what those advocacy plans look like. So let's start maybe with Camila this time. Would you mind explaining to us what your advocacy plan is, how you act on it, or maybe what inspired you to focus on the specific issues that your plan focuses on?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Well, for when I first started, my advocacy plan was focused on SNAP. As of 2022, I have decided to also focus more like on direct community outreach, directly reaching out to our residents and ask, what do you think you need? What do you think you need to live more comfortable, to not worry about food? Also to work directly with anti-hunger policies, to provide more testimonies, to reaching out to the authorities, and provide them with feedback, because sometimes it's easy to think you might get an idea of someone filling out a survey, but not everyone has access to a computer, to internet, to a phone. So it's easier if you talk to people directly. I know because of COVID, it's hard. I also feel that there is also another way to do it, because everything is fixable, most of the things at least. And I think this is something that we can definitely work on. So my first year on the advisory board was more about reaching to the community, to the residents. This year, it will be also to communicate that feedback to the authorities and provide the testimony about it. And also implement maybe some suggestions on the WIC program, like also letting them know what's actually happening with the benefits. And I know that everything is being slow, so try to find a way to make this work for our authorities, but also for us as the residents and recipients of the benefits.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we've all maybe been a witness to some well-intentioned but tone-deaf attempts at fighting food insecurity. And so your perspective and your willingness to give that feedback, I think, is really, really important. Vanessa, would you like to share a little bit about your advocacy plan and what you're doing to carry out that plan?
Yeah, sure. So last year, my plan was more so focused on legislation and just advocacy and what can we do to change things. financially and that sort, but I found my niche in education. It's something that I always did on the side, like through my online platform. I was always giving gardening classes and teaching people what I did to kind of change my situation and put some more money in my pocket and food on the table. This year, and I found that the response was overwhelming. We had great events last year, and this year I plan to build on that, really focusing on education as an empowerment method. So not only are we doing kind of focused on adults last year, and roundtable discussions, and a lot of tough conversations happened around food. So continuing with our 3H Table Talk is kind of like a podcast where we talk about issues that are the underlying causes of food insecurity. So we talk about homelessness, we talk about income opportunities, how to hustle, and healing that goes into that process that kind of reconnects us. Continuing with the advocacy, but more so focusing on youth education this year. I am a mom, and I know that my kids influence my buying decisions. So we're in a few schools this year, doing a few after-school programs, getting kids into gardening, into food production, into how to homestead. We're going to be talking about food preservation. Where do things come from? I'm very excited. And this is just a building block to all of the things that we did last year. So what we're doing this year is what we did last year times 10.
I think that's great. I think a lot of us, myself included, came to this through kids and just their excitement and engagement, and how powerful that is in making adults move and advocate. So thank you for reaching out to them as well. And finally, Rona, what about your advocacy plan? What have you been working on?
Well, I'm really delighted to tell you about that. But before I talk about my advocacy plan, I would like to introduce a guest, Dr. Gage Gorski. She's in the center photo there. And Dr. Gorski is the child of my sister. And she is not into gender-specific pronouns, so I don't know whether to call her my niece or my niblet or whatever, but she is a social they are a social advocate. Dr. Gorski just completed some groundbreaking research on Jews of color. It's a whole new area. Dr. Gorski is a Jew of color, and I just wanted to welcome my niblet to this event. I was at her event last night, which was about Jews of color. Anyway, welcome, Dr. Gorski. Anyway, my advocacy plan began when I was shopping at my local supermarket using my SNAP, my EBT card, and I wanted to buy a rotisserie chicken. And I was told at the supermarket, you cannot buy cooked or prepared foods using your SNAP card. And I said, what? That's ridiculous. So my nickname is now the rotisserie chicken lady. And I didn't know why or what, but I realized because I'm a disability advocate and I've worked all my life with physical and mental disabilities, this was discriminatory. There are people who are SNAP beneficiaries that are unable to prepare their own food. A friend of mine, a senior with arthritis, can't cut up a raw chicken, but she can't buy a rotisserie chicken using SNAP. People with mental illness may not have a kitchen. They live in a rented room, or they're homeless, or on and on. I had a lot of examples, and I attended 2 years ago, it was right before the pandemic, I attended the National Hunger Policy Conference, and I met with legislators on the Hill and told them about this, that you couldn't get cooked, not just cooked food, but prepared food. My friend couldn't get a chicken salad at a grocery store because it's prepared. And I was appalled by that. So then I also learned that people with SNAP couldn't get food at restaurants. And there is a law called the Restaurant Meals Program, the RMP. It's been passed. It's been passed actually in our state of Maryland, but it has not yet been rolled out, as MJ Wilson uses the term. It hasn't been implemented in Montgomery County. So my advocacy plan has two important goals. That is to change SNAP legislation so that cooked and prepared foods are included, and that restaurant meal plans in Montgomery County, that restaurants in Montgomery County will accept SNAP. So that's what I'm working on. I've testified to the Maryland legislators. I spoke 2 years ago to the federal legislators, and I'm working on this. And what I'm doing lately is, as advocates know, it's important to have someone with lived experience. I've had lived experience with food insecurity, but I don't have a physical or a mental disability, not a diagnosed one. Anyway, that was a little side humor. But many people I know do, and now I'm recruiting people who live with a physical or a mental disability or a senior, people who are unable to prepare food, who would benefit using SNAP or going to a restaurant. And I'm recruiting them to go with me when I meet with legislators. One of the things I recently learned from my advisory committee from the Food Council is to go for the federal, because SNAP is federal legislation. And I learned that it's part of the Farm Bill, and the Farm Bill is coming up for renewal in 2023. So 2022 is the perfect year for us to push really hard to get this change. And what I'm saying as an advocate is, it's a legislative change that won't cost anything, and it'll improve the economy, because restaurants and grocery stores will get more revenue than they had before, and it benefits everyone, not just people with disabilities. I'm sure those of us who are single parents would love to be able to get a rotisserie chicken rather than spend the whole day cooking. It's just part of the culture now that people do takeout or they get cooked food. It wasn't part of the culture when SNAP was first approved by the government. The supermarkets only had raw food. You couldn't go to a supermarket and get a cooked meal like you can now. So that's my advocacy plan, and be happy to answer any questions after we get into that phase.
Thank you, Rona. I think you point out something so important, and that is that statistics and data are really important when you're advocating, but having a story is just as powerful and impactful. Having something like the rotisserie chicken lady so succinctly tells that story of how inequities in our federal nutrition programs really do hurt the people who need these benefits. So thanks for sharing that with us. All right, ladies, this is your moment to shine. Our next question is, tell us about one major accomplishment in your advocacy plan that you'd like to share with us, sort of your pinnacle moment as part of the FSCAB. Camilla, do you want to start?
Sure.
You off guard. I was rotating. I know I hit you up first last time, but I'm doing it again, so go for it.
That's fine. Well, I think I have one of them. I think the main one was the passing of the House Bill 891, SB 767, which is the Hunger Free Campus Grant Program, where I provided my testimony about my own like food insecurity experience during college and how I had to decide whether I will go to college, pay rent, or survived. So I had to choose survive, of course, because if not, I was not going to make it into college. And the other thing that I feel was very important for me, it was being part of the anti-hunger roundtable that we had with Representative Jamie Raskin and McGovern. Both of them were very supportive and like proud about all the job that Montgomery County was doing and how we were trying to not only handle but actually ending with hunger in the county. And it was fun to impress them. It was good, and that made me feel like a proud resident of the Montgomery County. So I think those two things are the biggest, and I'm trying to work on more and more that will try to provide more benefits for all of us.
You're hitting them at every level, federal, state, local. It's fantastic. Rona, how about you? A highlight from your past years?
Well, something just happened a week or so ago, the Pinnacle. I was contacted by a reporter, a journalist who's interested in what we're doing, and especially the restaurant meals program. And she interviewed me, and I gave her an extensive interview about the restaurant meals program and about the cooked and prepared foods issues. And she wrote a very detailed, excellent article that was published, I think, a week or two ago. This came out, and it was in a sort of a government publication through the Pew Foundation, but it also appeared on USA Today, and it's been picked up by other media. So the word is getting out, and that was a Pinnacle experience using the media. I'm excited about that.
Congratulations, Rona. Yeah, Allison just typed up that she will put a link in the chat to that so you can all read about Rona's media star experience. And then finally, Vanessa, do you have a major highlight or accomplishment you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I want to say congratulations, Rona. First of all, I read your article and it is absolutely amazing. You're one of my favorite people, by the way. I love Rona so much.
I love you too, Vanessa. Are you going to tell people what I said when I first met you?
I don't remember. What did you say?
I said, well, I don't mean to be political, but I said if Kamala Harris becomes the president, you will definitely be one of her.
Oh,
You'll be on that board, or you'll be one of the directors there. I predict.
You're about to graduate this, Rona. As far as wins go, for me, I have a few, and everybody wants me to say the White House did it, but for me, that wasn't the best part. Last year, my organization put on an event called Moco Grows, and it was a 3-day, completely free gardening education event where we had 8 classes. We had 450 attendees who all learned about how to grow food to offset food insecurity. The week after that, we gave out 200 live vegetable plants. So the win was hearing and getting pictures all summer long of people who never thought that they could grow their own food or didn't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, sending me pictures of their growing tomato plants and pepper plants and all these different herbs. That was just a huge win for me and a huge win for Montgomery County. One of the other things, of course, has got to be the work done with the child tax credit, and being able to talk to President Biden and Vice President Harris about, you know, what the child tax credit would do for my family and families like mine, and the ability to go on Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC and talk about the child tax credit on the very first day that it came out, and a little bit significant but didn't get as much of a buzz, was my testimony in support of the Heat and Eat bill with Delegate Charkoudian and that passing the Maryland legislature. So last year was a great year. I don't know how I'm going to top it, but we're working on it.
You have, some incredible highlights, but I love that you led with the gardening first as an aspiring farmer, and and someone who really appreciates growing food. I think it's a testament to your work, how you you go first to the community as your accomplishment, and I think that is just fantastic. Our next question is about, I used to work in the hospitality industry. We were never allowed to say problem or failure. It was always opportunity. So I was wondering if you could talk maybe about an opportunity that you came up with during your time on the FSCAB with your advocacy plan, something that was a challenge or something that you had to learn to overcome. And I will start with Vanessa this time.
I think that opportunity. I think that when I teach, I say you don't have any failures in the garden. You only have lessons. So you either have harvest or lessons. It doesn't really go either way. But for me, I would say that some of the lessons that I learned last year was the timing of things. Me just getting to know how things. I'm not originally from Maryland. I moved here 5 years ago. So getting to know how things work and how things come to be and what tables you actually should sit at and who you should talk to, navigating that while at the same time trying to make a change. I've learned that I need to be very deliberate. I was burnt out by the end of last summer, and so I'm going to really try to fill my own cup this year so I can pour out into the community. But also I have sat down with the two people that I work with and just saying, this is what we want to focus on, and do the same thing, but focus more on a greater impact by having more time to plan. We're going to go back and do that same event again this year and hopefully every year after. But we did that event in 3 weeks of planning. Now we have 6 months. So definitely more planning and more goal setting to see kind of, and setting benchmarks where we're just trying to do whatever we could at the last minute last year.
It's always great to be able to build on experience, right? Just a timing note, we have another just 3 minutes before we sort of wrap up and head to question sessions. So I do want to get to these opportunity questions. Camilla, any challenges that you face that you'd like to share with us?
Well, like Vanessa was saying, that what maybe was not a failure for me, I think that when it comes to hunger, there's only winning or losing. You cannot win if you don't end with hunger, and you cannot lose because if you cannot be living with hunger. So I think the setback was to look for the answers in the wrong place. Probably I should have studied more about that part of how to get the answer and how to reach to the right people in charge. You cannot go and talk to the president because there are steps in between. But there is also like a certain like type of things that you need to do in order to get there and to prepare yourself to be able to advocate for those things. So I guess also like a way to improve that, it's prepare myself, make sure I have my days clear, and then reach out to the right people.
Yeah, it's a complicated process. So you really point out a good lesson there, and like knowing who to talk to and how it all works is sort of a critical first step. Rona, do you want to wrap things up with one more word about your plan and the challenge?
Yeah, really quick. The challenge for me is my own impatience. I spoke 2 years ago on the floor at a conference with 1,000 people, and I thought it's going to happen right away, and nothing's happened yet. So I've been told that things take time. Legislative change takes time. You have to know the right people to talk to and be patient. And I was convinced not to give up. So here I am.
That is a great last word for us, not to give up, to have patience and endurance and perseverance, right? Well, just a huge thanks again to Vanessa and Rona and Camilla for sharing with us today, for all of the work you're doing on your advocacy plans, for making such an important contribution to the local, state, and national community of people fighting against hunger. So again, from the Food Council and Hunger Free America, I'm sure we'd like just to say thank you, and I will pass it back over to Kim and see if there are any questions.
Yeah. absolutely. Wow, that was incredible. I learned a lot. I know somebody in the chat said they wanted a recording of it to share. I do too. As soon as we get the recording up, I want to share this with folks because I think there was so much great information here. So we just like to use this portion to open it up to any questions that folks might have. If you're able to use the raise hand function at the bottom under reactions, and you want to ask a question, you can certainly do that. You can also throw a question in the chat, certainly, and we'll make sure to read that. But yeah, we just wanted to open it up to anybody who might have any questions. And while you're thinking of a question, I'll start things off if that's okay. This is actually something that I thought of when Rona was speaking, and so Rona, I don't know if you'd like to address this or others, but talking about the notion of the stigma associated with accessing benefits, and you talked about how you didn't think of yourself as a person who would necessarily need benefits. So I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about what your organization does to try to de-stigmatize the use of food access benefits and things like that.
Great question. Great question. I think there are people who could benefit from Manna Food Bank and SNAP benefits who they may not know about it, or there's a stigma that they need charity or welfare. And I'm going to admit something. The first day that I went to Manna to pick up my food, because of the stigma, because of who I've been, I went in my car and I had a total meltdown. I screamed and cried. I screamed and cried. How did I end up here? But anyone could end up there. And I was happy to present to the federal legislators, because I'm not the face of the typical welfare recipient. And I feel like people have to overcome the stigma. I think the Food Council has addressed the problem with immigrants. They're afraid to apply for the benefits. They're afraid they'll be deported. So I think what we need to do is get really good publicity out there, maybe through TV or certain kinds of publicity. Oh, my camera just fell down. Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
Okay, here I am. I'm so. Here we go. Sorry. Well, anyway, that's what I think we need, the publicity to get to people and tell them how to apply, where to go. All right, never mind.
We're going to come back to you, Rona. No worries,
Okay.
no worries. We'll come back to you.
Okay,
Thank you so
thanks.
much. That has happened to me more times than I care to admit with my laptop. Great. So does anyone else have any questions? Like I said, you can either put them in the chat or you can raise your hand if you have anything else that you would like to ask our amazing panelists here. I will say, we are doing this as part of a day of service on Martin Luther King Day, and talking about, the intersectionality of food justice and racial justice and so many other things. And I'm not really directing this to anyone in particular, but if anyone wants to just sort of talk about the ways in which that informs and impacts your work, and how we can sort of address things like racial injustice and other things while also dealing with the impact of rising food prices and food insecurity and all of those things. Is that something that your organization talks about and thinks about when doing this work?
I don't know if this answers your question specifically, but I would like to just put it out in the universe that I work with, especially in this area. I'm in the White Oak area, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that area, but Montgomery County is a melting pot. It's a great representation of the United States. There's so many different types of people. But coming from a Caribbean background or an immigrant background, and also, growing up here as well, I think some things are overlooked. I think that, yes, there is an issue with racial disparities, and a lot of help needs to be coming into minority communities. But I think we also forget that the immigrant populations, we get everything from them. Let's not forget that a lot of our farming techniques and our food techniques, survivalism is built into these people. It takes a lot to come from where you've come from to here and start a whole new life and make it. And so I think we need to remember that instead of barging into communities and thinking that we know what they need, we need to do more listening. We need to acknowledge that they already know what they need. They already know they need resources. They don't need someone to come in with all the answers. For my community, it means we need more space to garden. While we do, some communities need education and access. It's more about the access. It's, you know, we can't get the food that we eat, the culturally appropriate foods from the grocery store. So give us farmers markets, you know, give us some type of inkling that you care about where we come from, not just where we are. And the next thing would be that I think another thing for us would be that you wouldn't want to just assume, and I think assumption is what gets us into a lot of different problems, that communities don't want change. If I'm worried about how I can eat today but can't eat tomorrow, please don't expect me to care about other community issues. So we want to talk to them about voting, and we want to talk to them all these different changes and wonder why gentrification is eating up our neighborhoods when we're just trying to survive. So we have to create headspace for people to become advocates for the community and give them opportunities to have seats while you guys are creating seats at the table. A seat at the table is not a 10 a.m. meeting on a Wednesday when I'm working to feed my family. So we need to create spaces, invite people, and not take what they already know for granted.
That was an excellent answer to my question, and thank you so much for sharing that. Any other questions from any of our participants or anyone in the chat? We have a focus on obviously the importance of volunteerism, and I'm wondering, you know, what opportunities are there? I know you were specifically in Montgomery County, but, you know, opportunities for folks who, you know, maybe have a few hours and want to help out in some way or contribute in some way. You know, what are, you know, some of the ways that folks can contribute to the organization if they maybe don't have like a ton of time, but they want to do something to contribute? You know, what is a way people could do that? I don't know if Elizabeth maybe wants to.
Sure. I think that,
yeah.
to be honest, I think that is something that we are always considering, is how to engage the community in our work. One of the things we do is create a community space for the organizations in Montgomery County so that we can help them to reach out to individuals to do this kind of work. And then the other thing that I think we focus on is that I think the pandemic really brought to light an emergency food situation, but that there's always been a need in the county predating the pandemic. And so while families would love to be able to go to a food distribution site and fill the bags, that there really is a lot more sustainable work that needs to be done. And so, you know, that's one of the struggles, or one of the, not struggles, not even opportunity. I think a real interesting challenge is to how to activate people to become sort of citizen activists and learn how to do what Vanessa just said, really help support their own communities, listening to their communities and the voice of the people who need assistance, and helping to elevate or amplify that. So that's something we're always looking to do.
That's great. That's great. And in the chat, Dr. Gorski just said, you know, not local, but would love to still support. And so hopefully there are also ways, maybe from afar, whether it's through social media or other skills-based, you know, volunteerism, where you don't have to physically be at the location, especially now in this era of remote work. Hopefully there are lots of opportunities for people who want to help, even if they're not local. So I think that's important as well. Unless there are any other comments or questions, I really just want to take the opportunity to say a few closing remarks. Obviously, I want to thank everybody so much for attending, raising up voices within the community to better serve the community as part of the Hunger Free America MLK Serve-a-thon. And of course, want to thank all of you, all of our amazing speakers for being here today. We hope you found the session informative and impactful. And in the chat, we're going to be leaving a link actually for a brief survey about your experience so that we can get your feedback and hopefully make future events even better. And I will say, if you would like to continue supporting the mission of either the Montgomery County Food Council or of HFA, you can always consider making a donation so that we can all continue doing this great work. And we're also going to be sharing some chats, some links in the chat as well. And I know somebody in the chat had asked about the video of this. I agree. I think this is a great video. So like we said, we're going to be putting that up on our YouTube page very soon. All of the sessions from this weekend, in fact, are going to be going up. So if there are some that you missed or really would like to see, you'll be able to do that as well. So with that, again, I just want to thank everybody. I don't know if any of our speakers have any final closing thoughts they would like to leave us with, but you all have been just wonderful to listen to. I've learned a lot. I hope everybody here has learned a lot. So with that, I will thank everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Oh, and one last thing, we do have one last phone bank coming up for today. I believe it starts at 6:30, and hopefully, oh, Kayla's ahead of me. She's in the chat already saying it. These phone banks have been great. It's calling people and just informing them that they may be eligible for these benefits, and if they're interested, putting them in touch with our benefits access team who can work with them to get them the benefits that they need. So it's a fun phone bank. It's not trying to convince somebody to vote. It's just like, we want to help you and we want to give you these benefits. So it's really, really fun. And Kayla has included the link to the upcoming phone bank, so anybody who wants to is welcome to join us. So thank you all so much again. We really appreciate your time. Hope you found it informative, and we hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you so much, everybody.